At 63, Jim Carrey's hidden partner reveals it all. In September 2017, Jim Carrey stood on a red carpet and told a reporter he did not believe he existed. People thought he was breaking down. They thought the years of loss, the lawsuits, the death of Catriona White, and the depression he had quietly carried since the 1980s had finally cracked him open. He vanished from Hollywood soon after. Then in February 2026, he stepped onto a stage in Paris and dropped a single sentence that broke the internet, not because of a film announcement or a comeback role, but because of a woman named Minna. And suddenly, a relationship that had been hidden for 4 years was front-page news everywhere. Jim Carrey was born James Eugene Carrey on January 17, 1962 in Newmarket, Ontario, Canada. Long before fame, before movie sets and red carpets and giant paychecks, his life was built around pressure. His family later lived in Scarborough near Toronto, and money was never loose or easy. His father, Percy, had real musical talent and could play the saxophone. But Percy learned a hard truth early on. Being gifted was not enough. Bills still had to be paid, and losing everything was always a real possibility. That fear became very real when Jim was around 12 years old. His father lost his job at a tire factory, and at one point the family ended up living out of a Volkswagen van. It was not some adventurous road trip. It was survival, plain and simple. Some accounts describe Jim and his siblings living in a tent near Lake Ontario for a stretch. Sleep was harder. Privacy disappeared. School became almost impossible. So his teenage years did not feel like normal teenage years at all. He was focused on getting through the next day, not on fitting in. Things became even tougher when the family's housing became tied to janitorial work at the same factory that had let his father go. Jim, still a teenager, was working 8-hour overnight shifts starting around 6 in the evening, then trying to function in school the next day. He was cleaning through the night and sitting in classrooms while exhausted, expected to perform like nothing was wrong. It was humiliating and it forced him to grow up far too early. Eventually, on his 16th birthday in 1978, he dropped out. His first time on a real stage was just as brutal. At 15 years old, Jim performed stand-up at Yuck Yucks in Toronto, wearing a suit his mother had made for him. The audience did not laugh. The set failed in silence. For most teenagers, that moment would have ended the dream entirely. But Jim treated it like a lesson instead of a verdict. He studied timing, movement, and expression. He kept going. Then in 1981, at just 19 years old, he left Canada and moved to Los Angeles alone. He had almost no money, no powerful connections, and no guarantee anyone in America would care. Some accounts from that period describe him sleeping in his car. He was not chasing comfort. He was chasing something that felt more real to him than safety ever had. Slowly, things started to shift. Rodney Dangerfield noticed Jim's act and hired him as an opening act, suddenly placing him in front of much larger audiences. But Hollywood still kept its doors mostly closed. He auditioned for Saturday Night Live twice and was rejected both times. In 1984, he landed a lead role in an NBC sitcom called The Duck Factory. It lasted less than 3 months before it was cancelled. Another chance had arrived and disappeared almost immediately. Somewhere in the middle of all that grinding, in 1987, he wrote himself a check for $10 million for acting services rendered and kept it in his wallet, dated years into the future. It sounds almost unreal, until you learn that in 1994 he earned exactly $10 million for Dumb and Dumber. And in a detail that says everything about the man, when his father Percy passed away that same year, Jim placed the check in the casket with him. The thing that truly changed his trajectory arrived in 1990 when he joined the cast of In Living Color on Fox. He was the only white regular cast member on a show built to platform black and minority talent. He could not rely on image or background. He had to earn every moment through sheer force of performance. His character Fire Marshal Bill became iconic, and the intensity he brought to it reportedly did not stop between takes. He stayed in character off stage in ways that unsettled even his co-stars. Then came 1994. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective opened on February 4 and pulled in over $100 million worldwide against a $15 million budget. The Mask followed in July and earned around $350 million globally, introducing the world to Cameron Diaz in her first screen role. Then Dumb and Dumber closed the year in December with another $250 million worldwide. 3 massive hits in a single calendar year. Nothing like it had been seen before in comedy. But while audiences were watching a fearless, explosive star on screen, Jim was quietly dealing with a long-running depression that had followed him since the 1980s. He later spoke openly about using Prozac for years and described his emotional life as a cycle of peaks and valleys. That contrast, the giant grin on screen and the quiet struggle behind it, is what makes that whole period feel heavier than it appears. The deeper side of him broke through publicly with The Truman Show in 1998. He fought personally to get in front of director Peter Weir, and Weir later said Jim's audition was the finest he had ever seen. The film won him the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Drama. But the Academy left him off the Oscar nominations entirely, which made his acceptance speech feel more raw and painful than triumphant. He joked about not believing in awards while clearly being moved by the moment. It was honest and uncomfortable in a way that stayed with people. Then came Man on the Moon in 1999, where he disappeared so completely into the role of Andy Kaufman that co-stars including Danny DeVito and Paul Giamatti later described the experience as genuinely disturbing. How the Grinch Stole Christmas in 2000 brought a different kind of suffering, 2.5 hours of prosthetic makeup every morning across a 92-day shoot that Jim described as being buried alive. The studio reportedly brought in a CIA-trained expert to teach him mental endurance techniques just to survive the costume process. By 2004, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind arrived, and director Michel Gondry reportedly saw Jim after a real breakup and wanted to preserve that emotional rawness for the role. Jim later said the character felt personal because he himself felt erased at the time. Many critics still consider it his greatest dramatic performance. Then came that September 2017 red carpet moment where he said he did not exist. After that, he stepped further and further away from Hollywood. He began painting obsessively dark imagery, giant political caricatures. The retreat was real and it lasted years. He did break it briefly. In December 2024, he returned as Dr. Robotnik for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, and when asked why he came back after announcing retirement, he laughed and said plainly, "I bought a lot of stuff and I need the money, frankly." It was classic Jim, self-aware, disarming, and just honest enough to land perfectly. Variety. Then in November 2025 came his first truly meaningful public reappearance. He appeared at the 2025 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony at the Peacock Theater in Los Angeles on November 8, where he inducted Soundgarden. People noticed how calm and grounded he seemed. This was not the hyperactive version of Jim Carrey the world had built in its memory. He looked settled. He looked like a man who had found something steady. Filmogaz. What that something was became clear 3 months later in Paris. On February 26, 2026, Jim accepted the honorary César Award at l'Olympia, delivering his entire acceptance speech in French, a nod to his ancestral ties to Saint Malo, France. The French Academy called him one of the most original voices in modern cinema. And then, mid-speech, he dropped the line that stopped everything. "Thank you to my sublime companion, Mina. I love you, Mina." The National Desk. The National Desk. The room went quiet before reacting. Mina, also referred to as Minzy, is a Los Angeles-based actress and artist who had first appeared publicly alongside Jim in February 2022 when the two were photographed leaving a charity comedy event hosted by Judd Apatow. That moment barely caused a ripple at the time. For 4 years, Jim had managed to keep her almost entirely out of the public eye. No social media footprint, no soft launches, no leaked photos. Filmogaz. At the César Awards, Mina was seated alongside Jim's daughter Jane Erin Carrey and his grandson Jackson. That seating detail matters more than any statement. In celebrity culture, being placed among immediate family is rarely accidental. It told the story without needing any further explanation. She knows. According to Gregory Collier, the general delegate of the César Awards, Jim's visit had been planned since the previous summer, and he worked on his French speech for months, asking about the exact pronunciation of certain words. He arrived in Paris with Mina, his daughter, his grandson, 12 close friends and family members, and his longtime publicist. His old friend Michel Gondry was there as well. The National Desk. The internet, predictably, erupted, though not only about Mina. Some online commenters began speculating that Jim had received plastic surgery, while more extreme theories suggested he had been replaced by a clone or that drag performer Alexis Stone had impersonated him at the ceremony. Stone fed into the rumors briefly by posting images of prosthetics and a wig online, though the César organization firmly shut the speculation down. The ceremony's organizers confirmed everything plainly. Jim Carrey attended, accepted his award, and delivered a heartfelt speech in a second language he had been quietly practicing for months. The National Desk. The National Desk. As for what comes next, Jim has made his position on marriage clear before. In a 2014 interview, he said plainly that he does not see it as necessary. He has been married twice before, to Melissa Woolmer from 1987 to 1995, with whom he has daughter Jane, and briefly to Lauren Holly in 1996. His history makes his view on the subject easier to understand. What is harder to predict is whether he will return to film beyond Sonic. Since stepping back from Hollywood, Jim has channeled his energy into painting, sculpture, drawing, and political cartooning. He has said the performing process had become spiritually exhausting after 35 years. He has also said the right project could change that. Filmogaz. But what the Paris night really revealed was not about movies at all. It was about a man who spent decades hiding his pain behind enormous performances, who walked away from the machine that made him famous, who found someone willing to exist beside him in near total privacy for 4 years, and who finally, in front of the world, simply said her name. That is the story. Not the clone theories. Not the plastic surgery debates. The story is a kid who grew up in a van and a tent, wrote himself a check for a life that did not exist yet, made the whole world laugh while quietly falling apart, and somehow, at 63, found something real enough to say out loud.